Hello,
Perfect.
everyone. This is Lilia with 2 Days, and I am here with Lexi Bedier, an international student at Penn State from Canada. Welcome, Lexi. She plays for the Penn State women's hockey team. Would you like to say some words about yourself first?
Sure. Yeah. As you said, my name is Lexi Bedier. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, which is about as far as you can get from here. It's on the west coast of Canada. Um, I'm a freshman here on the women's hockey team, and so I'm just starting my NCAA journey here at Penn State.
Awesome. So, as you said, you're from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And what is it like studying abroad for you?
It's very, very different from any kind of college environments that I'm used to or that I've seen. There's a real sense of community here, and a lot more emphasis on, say, athletics and different events like Thon. You wouldn't see so much. In Canada, there's a lot more kind of kids living at home and then just traveling to campus, especially in Western Canada. It's different on some of the bigger campuses like UBC and U of T, but in general, it's a lot less community feeling than Penn State.
That's awesome to know. How long have you been playing ice hockey, and like what made you pursue such a sport?
So my dad played hockey at all levels, and he was the main reason that I got into hockey. I've been playing since I was probably 5 or 6, and he was carrying me around on the ice from about the time I was 1 or 2. Um, he uh, he was kind of my main reason, and I had a very active family. Anyways, my mom played a lot of sports, so playing a sport was a non-negotiable. But hockey was the first one I was put into. So
That's awesome. So then what made you think of the US and then Penn State specifically? Did you have other like options in mind, and like why did you pick Penn State?
yeah, so I actually, this is a little controversial, but I was committed to Ohio State for about a year and a half prior to coming to Penn State. I knew I wanted to be in the U.S. because of the level. A lot of Canadians come from Canada to come to the U.S. just because the NCAA is such a revered and high level of hockey. So I was committed to Ohio State, and I loved that big campus, big sports school feel. With COVID and everything, that opportunity and that deal kind of fell to the wayside. But I am actually very, very grateful for that, considering where I ended up. Penn State is by far the coolest school I've seen. Um, I did have some options as to where I wanted to go, but this by far took the cake for sure.
That's awesome. And then as an international student, would you say that as I mentioned previously, as an international student in a D1 sport, do you think it has its benefits? Why or why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I won't lie to you. Being a D1 athlete is incredibly difficult. It's takes a lot of dedication, a lot of time management, a lot of perseverance, and you really have to love what you're doing because it is so hard at a lot of times that your love for the game or your love for the school is really going to be the only thing that gets you through it. So I definitely think that moving forward, it's one of those experiences that it just builds you and creates this person. It molds this person that'll be able to handle so much in the outside world, and you really learn those skills, those time management, that determination, that work ethic um, that you need. And we're exposed to that really, really early, and we're exposed to whether that be rejection or success early. We have to learn how to handle that. So I think it's an extremely beneficial experience.
Yeah, I think so too. What would you say was the most challenging part of your recruiting process internationally?
Internationally, I would say the hardest part is exposure. Um, so being from Western Canada, it's a little bit easier on the East Coast for girls who live in, say, Ontario or Quebec. But being from Alberta or even from British Columbia, right on the West Coast, there's no hockey schools on the West Coast in the States, so it's very difficult to be seen by some of those schools. You have to do a lot of traveling. We did a lot of tournaments and other things that meant that I had to leave where I was. I ended up moving away from home at 14, 15 years old just to get that exposure, which extremely common for young girls to move away from home that young, and in order to kind of pursue that Division 1 dream.
That's crazy. Um, so as an international student, of course, what would you say was the most challenging thing to achieve before coming to Penn State? Like you mentioned previously, the exposure, like did you ever come to the US and like meet the recruiters, or like did you just, was it all like through emails or videos and all of that stuff?
There's a couple definitely challenging aspects. One was definitely after being decommitted from Ohio State. That was in November of my grade 12 year. So at that point, normally girls commit when I committed the first time, which is about grade 9 or 10, which is extremely early. It's hard to know what you want at that age, but you're making a choice. You're on the phone. That's how most recruiting happens. You're talking to coaches on the phone. You're doing Zoom calls, seeing their arenas. Every athlete, COVID willing, gets 5 official visits. So the school will fly you out. They'll pay for it all for you to come see their school. I didn't take any of those strictly because I took one to Ohio, but strictly because of COVID and not being able. So I actually committed to Penn State having not seen it, other than photos and Zoom presentations. But I think the most difficult part of that recruitment process is being seen. The initial communication comes through your high school coach. It's just a very, very tedious process. There's a lot of rules around when you're allowed to talk to a coach and what you're allowed to say and all those things. So staying within those rules and then still having those really in-depth conversations with coaches to figure out where your home for the next 4 years is going to be and making sure that it really is a good fit.
Yeah, that's very important. Would you say like Penn State met your expectations without ever coming to campus?
Oh, I would say it exceeded for sure. I knew, I'd heard it was a beautiful campus, but it was one of those places that you don't understand until you've been there. So I was
Yeah,
very, very happy when I got to campus and saw this place.
I agree. I personally never saw Penn State either, and it's just awesome.
Yeah.
So, if you had the option to try out another sport given the offer, what would it be and why?
Oh, this one, I used to play box lacrosse, which is indoor. It's a little bit different than field lacrosse, but I think that I would try either field lacrosse or I always really liked volleyball. So I think that if I was any good at it, that would have been a cool sport to play as well.
Okay, that's awesome. Does your mom ever played any of those sports, or like you just have interest in it?
She played basketball and volleyball, but that interest really came from just playing high school sports. I played for my high school volleyball team and that stuff. So, like I said, wasn't very good at it, but had a lot of fun doing it. So,
That's awesome. That's what counts. So then, being here away from home, how would you overcome homesickness?
the most important thing I think for overcoming those kind of waves of homesickness is just being in touch with your family. Um, I'll call them, I'll FaceTime them, that's really all you can do. There's always that being so far away from home. I mean, I don't get to go home very often. My parents can't come out on weekends just anytime. It's at least 3 flights if you fly from State College. So it is quite the process to get home or for anyone to come visit. So when I am feeling a little bit homesick, I just really try to ground myself back to maybe some photos or talk to my parents, talk it out with them. Um, and then always booking trips far in advance so I have something to look forward to. My parents, when they leave, even if it's not for another 4 to 6 weeks, they'll book right away so that I know, okay, I'm going to see them at this time and I can push through till then.
Yeah. And then what would you say what's the big thing that you miss the most from back home?
I'm extremely fortunate to live, if you know where Banff is, about an hour from Banff and 2 hours from Lake Louise and very close to a lot of incredible scenery, places that I didn't realize even how beautiful they were until I left. But that's probably, I miss my family. I miss my puppy, Todd. And I just miss being home. I miss the mountains. I miss Canada because it really is like such a beautiful place.
Yeah. And then the last question I have is like, what's the biggest difference between playing in Canada versus here? You mentioned before that like the different like community and like the connections and everything else. So like how would that, besides that, like what else is different?
Canada, it is in some ways to speak about hockey a little bit. It's a little bit of a different style of play. At least when I was coming up through Canadian hockey, it was a little bit more kind of heavy. A lot. There's so many hockey players in Canada from all over that it was a very competitive, very heavy environment, and playing in the Hockey Canada system, very systematic. You get in hard on pucks, that kind of thing. Whereas in the States, there is a lot more kind of in the style of play, some more flow, some more skill-based styles. And then the other biggest thing I would just say is the people are different. Like there's not one necessarily that's better than the other, but like Canadian girls and American girls are just, they grew up in totally different places and they have different mannerisms. And it's just very interesting to come from Western Canada to Eastern United States and like see those differences.
Yeah, they're probably very like different cultures and backgrounds. It all just varies. So that was it for the interview. Like, thank you so much for joining me and two-a-days.
Yeah, of course, anytime.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.